For today's lesson, our focus standard comes from Grade 7, Statistics and Probability, Standard 5. Understand that the probability of a chance event is a number between 0 and 1 that expresses the likelihood of the event occurring. Our topic comes from our probability unit, evaluating the likelihood. Our essential question: how can we describe the likelihood or chance of a given event? Please take a moment, pausing the video if you need to copy down the topic and the essential question along with today's date in your header. Be sure to set up your question column and your note column and resume the video when you're ready to begin. So let's dive in and talk about probability. Probability is like a rating system to describe what we expect the chance or likelihood is of a certain thing happening. We could use this to describe a lot of things: the weather, sporting events, you name it. So let's take a look at a few things in our real lives that we might want to describe the probability of. Here are our questions for today. A. What is the likelihood that you will watch a TV show today? B. What is the likelihood that you will take the bus to school tomorrow? C. What is the likelihood you will send a text in the next hour? D. What is the likelihood that your favorite sports team will win their next game? These are all things that we could describe what we think the expected outcome could be. For today, we are going to do so on a scale. So how would you rate your answers to the above questions? So what I'd like you to do is draw this scale in. Also be sure you've written down the questions so that it makes sense on this next part. And I want you to put on the scale where your answer would be. So for example, what is the likelihood that you will watch a TV show today? Well, for me personally, currently my TV is broken. So the likelihood that I will watch a TV show today is impossible. My TV is broken. There's no chance. So I would put A right here on my scale. For you, it might be different. So we're all going to rate our own likelihood to our answers to these questions. Go ahead, pausing the video, and go ahead and mark for A, B, C, and D where on this scale of impossible, unlikely, equally likely as unlikely, very likely, certain, which could also be described as guaranteed. So take a few moments to do that, then resume the video and we'll compare. Alright, let's compare. Again, yours may be in a completely different position. I've already talked about my TV, so let's take a look at question B. What is the likelihood that I will take the bus to school tomorrow? For me, I rated that as unlikely. I normally drive to school, but there's always the possibility that something happens to my car and I need to take the bus, so I'm going to put it at unlikely. The likelihood that I will send a text in the next hour, for me, is very likely. I oftentimes use that to communicate with my friends and family, so it's pretty likely. I don't think it's guaranteed, but it's very likely. And the likelihood that my favorite sports team will win their next game, well, right now my favorite sports team is the Giants. They have not been playing very well, so I put them at unlikely. We will compare where we put our answers to these questions in class and kind of discuss how we decided on those. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. what I want to talk about is how would this scale, how could we numerically talk about this scale? So, in talking about probability and likelihood, we use numerical values most of the time. So the scale helps us as we learn about those. And those numerical values are oftentimes written either as fractions, decimals, or percents. So what I'm going to do, and I'll demonstrate it with the fractions one, and then I'll see if you can do the next ones. So I have fractions that correspond to the scale we just used. Again, those ratings were impossible or no chance, not likely, could go either way, equally likely as unlikely. That is how it was written above. And very likely. Lastly, certain, otherwise known as guaranteed. So if I was to do a fraction, impossible or no chance, that would be a 0 out of 4. So that would be a fraction I could use to describe impossible on this scale, would be 0 out of 4 chance. The 1/2, where would that go? Let's see, what do you think? If you said could go either way, 1 out of 2, or half, which as we notice is halfway on our scale, it's right in the middle, I would agree. 4 out of 4. Well, 4 out of 4 is 100, or 1 out of 1, or certain, or guaranteed, so I'm going to put it here, and it is the 4th out of 4 sections. Let's see, where would we put 3/4? Well, I know 3/4 is bigger than 1/2 and less than 4 out of 4. So I'm going to put 3/4 right here on very likely. Which leaves one more spot for 1/4. 1/4 would be described as not likely, right? It's the first 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to go right here on the first out of 4 sections on our scale. So what I'm going to want you to do is to write down this scale again. And now we're going to copy down where these fractions are that we did together, that we decided where they went on our scale. And now you're going to decide where do the decimals and percents go. You want to do both of them, pausing the video to do both of them, and then resume to compare with me. That's fine. If you want to do the decimals and then resume it, compare with me, and then we'll do the percents, that works too. Whatever you feel comfortable with. So go ahead, pause the video now, see if you can place the decimals in the right position on our scale, our likelihood scale. So here's how I put the decimals. Notice it's basically, well it is, not just basically, it is equivalence. Fraction and decimal equivalence. 0/4 is equivalent to 0. 1/4 is equivalent to 0 and 25 hundredths. 1/2 is equivalent to 0 and 50 hundredths. 3/4 is equivalent to 0 and 75 hundredths. 4 out of 4 is equivalent to 1 whole. So these would be the correct places for the decimals on our likelihood scale. Go ahead and make sure that you have them in the correct spot, and then let's talk about the percents. If you haven't done the percents yet, go ahead and pause the video to put those on there. If you have, let's see if we agree. So now I have the percents on here. And again, all of these are equivalents. So 0/4, 0, and 0 are equivalent to 0%. 1/4 and 25 hundredths is equivalent to 25%. 1/2 or 50 hundredths is equivalent to 50%. 3/4 and 75 hundredths is equivalent to 75%. 4 out of 4, 1 whole, and 100% are all equivalent. So we could describe likelihood in words, like we started out with impossible or no chance, like not likely, could go either way, very likely, certain, or guaranteed. And in mathematics, we oftentimes then add numerical values to put a quantity to that. And these will be the quantities in fractions, decimals, and percents that we will use. So go ahead and make sure that this likelihood scale is copied down as it's now shown on the screen. And that's going to conclude our first video today on evaluating the likelihood for probability. Go ahead and take a moment to make sure that your notes are fully complete and come ready to talk more about this in class.